Imagine being on a boat. We're setting course for that direction. We shift course 1 degree. What's going to happen over a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, our lifetime? We're going to end up in a totally different place if we're willing to just show up to that 1 degree shift.
What's the importance of either jumping out of an airplane or metaphorically walking across hot coals, or quite literally for that matter?
One of my experiences was I did a coal walking. Have you ever done that?
I have not yet, but on the other hand, I've got a switch that's a little bit different in me. So I can go out running in the snow barefoot. In fact, there's videos of it. Or I've been at Death Valley and run on the pavement barefoot as well.
So you go that way. So I did this. I didn't think that anybody could get hurt walking across coals, because it's like, well, why would anybody ever lead this if someone could actually get injured? So I created the belief like, no one gets hurt doing this. It's just whatever's in people's heads. So when I was doing this coal walking workshop, it was pretty simple. The facilitators were like, you're just going to say this mantra. You're going to walk across the coals. No big deal. Get across. And I was like, great, let's do this. People around me were crying, were freaking out. I'm like, what's going on? Like, why are people so worried? Anyway, so I'm like, all right, let's go. I go across, I say the mantra, I get across, no big deal. I was like, okay, that was like fun, I guess, but it wasn't this big, profound experience that I was hoping for. Yeah. The next day I met this woman. I was standing in line to get tea, and this woman had a badge on that said Firewalker. And I was like, why do you have a badge? I didn't get a badge. And she was like, you don't want a badge. And I was like, I do want a badge, actually. And she said, you only get a badge if you burn your feet. And I was like, wait, what? I'm like, you actually got hurt? She said, I had to go to the ER because I don't know if it was 2nd degree burns, but she said halfway across the coals, I stopped walking and ended up burning my feet. And I, just got curious. I was like, well, what happened? She said, I started thinking about something about my daughter, and I just froze. And so for me, that idea of, so often in life, we are called in some ways, right, to make a change, to make a shift, to show up to our life, to get deadly serious about who we want to be and how we want to live. And too often than not, we go halfway or 2/3 of the way or 95% of the way, and then we stop right before the transformation's about to happen. And that's where we get burned. So for me, anytime I'm called to anything, anytime I'm interested in, participating and engaging with my life or making a shift, it's like, I've got to be willing to create the belief that I can do this, that I can go all the way. I've got to get in check any of those self-sabotaging thoughts that want to hijack my experience or my belief that I can actually do it, and then go all the way. So that way I don't literally or metaphorically get burned. And so to me, I just think it's important to get curious about what are the ways in which I stop or we stop when I'm being called to anything, right? It's like Joseph Campbell's, hero or heroine's journey. It's like whenever we're called to anything, it's almost guaranteed that the gremlins or the self-sabotaging thoughts are going to show up and say, are you sure about that? Or resistance is going to show up. And so when resistance shows up in my life, I'm like, okay, rather than running away, it's like, can I get extra curious about this? Can I keep going for the sake of the experiment? And it's like what I'm blossoming into.
Before I had my 2 NDEs and a 3rd accident, to finish off the trifecta, I was working in the fashion industry a couple decades ago, and I'd been listening to Wayne Dyer talking about you have to die while you're still alive. And I left a fashion show that just did not resonate with me at all. I'm in my suit. I walk down. I'm in Las Vegas, get to Circus Hotel. There's a giant crane going up into the sky for bungee cord jumps. Oh, God. You're right. I sign up for the bungee cord jump.
Great. Thank you.
I go to the top. I put my briefcase down, my sport coat or whatever suit coat down. Right. I'm harnessed in with my suit pants. And I did great right up until the point where the crane is swaying in the wind. You can see through the metal to the ground. And I actually had to walk like a 6-foot plank where you couldn't hold on and not fall off the plank, because then you mess up the bungee cord, and then jump.
Right.
I couldn't do that last bit. I did jump just a few weeks later after I had time to step back and breathe into it. Did you freeze? I froze. I went back and I had the instructor say the exact perfect gift of words to keep me from jumping. He said, keep you from jumping? Yes. He said, You intellectual types are all alike. You think too much. Look at me. I'm stupid and I can jump.
Great.
At which point I
Thank
took
you.
off the harness. My suit pants had split in two, which was universe laughing at me.
Sure.
And I couldn't get myself through that. Now, I had
Yeah.
time, a few weeks, to breathe into it, to start to face my gremlins. Then I
Yep.
ended up on a first date with a girl who said, why don't we do bungee jumping?
Oh my gosh.
And I did it, different place. I did it right away because male ego. And then I actually went back to do it a second time so that I could breathe into the experience.
Yeah.
What does it mean to do that, to breathe in? Because you've been with parachuting, you've seen
Yep.
person after person strapped onto an instructor, pleading,
Yep.
begging, crying.
Yep. Yeah. So one of the things that I like to do to be in the experiment of life is every year I try to study something new that I don't know anything about. For that reason of like, I want to feel like I'm standing on the edge of my own life. I want to not just like understand the concept of like, oh, jumping into the fire. We could talk about these things all day long. And to me, there's a big difference between knowing the menu of spirituality and knowing the menu of transformation and then actually tasting the food, right? So for me, it's always being in an experiment where I'm like, okay, what am I not good at? Where do I feel uncomfortable? And so one year I decided to take up skydiving and I fell in love with it. I just was like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. And it's such a great metaphor for life, similar to your bungee experience. It's like you are standing on the edge and every part of your brain, the gremlin, the self-sabotaging thoughts are like, don't do it. And then our body has a reaction of like, okay, whether I'm going to go or not. And one time I was taking my best friend, Erica, and I was like, all right, we're going to go. And I love to see people jump out first. It's just like, to me, it's just one of the best experiences. And just seeing people, you can see the anxiety, the fear, the like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And, when my friend jumped out, like she freaked out. She was like, I do not want to go, and tried to throw herself back into the plane. But if you've ever gone skydiving, similar to, well, actually I've never been to bungee jumping, but the skydive master's on your back. So you're going, right? So she literally tried to jump back in the plane and hold on. I see my best friend get ripped out, dragged out of the plane. And she's just like, no. And I'm like, oh my goodness, what have I done to her? But they're going. Yeah. And so the way I think of it, for me, that was such a great reminder of we can either willingly jump into the fire or we're going to get dragged out, right? It's like life's going to be like, all right, we're going. It's time to transform. Or that cosmic 2x4 is going to show up and say, like it's time to wake up. And it's part of why I love this idea of living yoga is like, how can I engage with life? How can I participate with life? And can I put myself into experiments to be uncomfortable for the sake of getting more comfortable being uncomfortable? So when life throws a curveball, right? It's like, okay, I've practiced being with this. I can show up to this and I don't need to run away because life is an adventure and it's not going to be this linear path of A to Z and everything was just easy, even though easy and deep. For me, it's learning, like, where do I historically go, right? It's like, how do I normally react when life gets challenging or difficult? And how can I practice how I want to be with the fire? So one of the experiments I'll often do, or I talk about in the book, is different kriyas or different practices that are creating a physical sensation that is meant to be intense so I can practice staying calm internally. Right?
Can you
so
give us an example of this? And I want to be clear, just like you say in the book, the difference between, is it pain and discomfort for people?
Yeah, pain and sensation or pain and discomfort. Like pain to me is like, if you are causing yourself pain emotionally, physically, spiritually, whatever, stop, right? Like just stop doing that. If it's sensation, I would say stay, get curious, notice, breathe, feel, allow it. And if you're not sure between the two, I would always say err on the side of caution, right? Like, one of the things for me, I'm always like to my students or anyone that I am friends with, I'm like, you have to live with your life. I don't. So, I think it's watching that part of ourselves or myself that wants to push through because it's trying to prove something versus, okay, what would it actually be to take care of myself? So for me, I don't know what you're like, but historically speaking, I was the type of person that was like, let's just keep going. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. And sitting in the fire for me is not to keep going. It's not to keep pushing. It's not to keep challenging myself. But for me, sitting in the fire is asking for help, slowing down. For years, I never understood why someone would take a nap. I'm like, what is napping? Like, why would you do that? There's so many things to do in the world, right? I'm just like, or like taking a bath, like just sitting there. I'm like, but there's so many things to do. Why are you just sitting there? So for me, this idea of sitting in the fire, I just want to be clear. It's not about, for some of us, it's about getting comfortable, being uncomfortable, slowing down, pausing, resting, surrendering, trusting. And for some of us, it's going, jumping, jump off the diving board, jump, the bungee jump. It's doing all of that. So wait, what was your original question before I went off this tangent?
You said that there are many different kriyas that you
right.
suggest in the book. And so I'm wondering if you can give an example, an exercise, homework for people as one that they can try. But I just wanted to make that safety call. Yeah. So for instance, after this interview, I'm going to go running in shorts with almost nothing else on, shoes I will have on, in the snow in the 20s.
Great.
But I'm going to be, to me, it's not pain. There's a sensation. I'm not a sadist at all, but I'm going to be observing the body, checking in, asking myself as fear comes up, learning from it. And I'll actually feel quite alive and free because I will be more present than ever. And at a certain point, maybe well short of where my goal is, I'm going to say, oh, the body feels like turning. I love you, body. Let's turn now.
It's great. It's such a great awareness before I, offer a practice. Because it's like, I have been a triathlete and I was training for an Ironman. Yeah. And after all the surgeries, like I still can't straighten my leg and I still have things that I deal with on a daily basis. And my mantra the whole time was keep going, stop if it hurts, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's like the gremlin wants to say stop, but then the gremlin also wants to say keep going. So it's like, can I pay attention to both of them and say, what is the most skillful thing I can do right now? What is the thing that's going to serve me most? A really simple practice, I think, is for most people, unless you've had neck surgery or shoulder surgery, put your arms up, put a timer on for 30 minutes. Just arms up, 30 minutes, and make the commitment that no matter what, unless the house is on fire, you're going to just keep your arms up and you're just going to notice. You're going to watch, you're going to observe, and then try to create that boundary with the gremlin that wants to say 10 minutes in, yeah, I get the point. Okay, we can stop now. Or the part of the mind that wants to say, well, why didn't she say do it for an hour? Like, let's just keep going. And it's like, okay, commit to 30 minutes, arms up, and just notice. Notice what comes up. Notice what waves you're riding. It's why there's a book of the cover's got waves on it, right? Like waves are going to go through. And can we notice? Can we observe? Can we be with? And then can we also act? Can we show up and say, okay, that thought is not helpful right now. What thought would be helpful? So when I did a half Ironman a couple of years ago, and when I was on the bike, I was like, what thought would be helpful right now? And I was like, what if this were fun? Like, just what if this whole thing were fun? Like, I'm choosing to do this. No one else told me to do it. And I try to bring that belief in as many times as I possibly can. So that could be a really first step into doing a practice of observation, of notice, and just being with different waves. To intensify it a little bit, you could do a bridge pose for 30 minutes. You could do a goddess pose for 30 minutes. The practice that I talk about in the book is a kriya of, it's really just standing. I'm sitting down right now, but it's standing up, legs strong, arms come up overhead, and then arms come down. And it's like a sharp movement. And typically when I lead this, we do add on a mantra, but mantra's not for everybody. I like it. The mantra that we use is Sat, S-A-T, and then Nam, N-A-M. And so it's Sat, Nam. And we do it for 22 minutes. And it's just go all the way. What does 100% look like? Not 95%, not 100, 110%. It's just like, all you need to do is 100%. And, for me, the question I love that my friend Katie Brower always asks, who are you when nobody's watching, right? It's like when it's you in the fire, like, who are you? Because sometimes people can show up when other people are watching. And I'm always like, okay, now those people will go away and it's you in the fire. Now what? Show up for yourself. And so to me, those are just some simple practices. And for some people, it might be do it for a minute. Right? Like know your own edge, do it for 10 minutes, do it for whatever, to gather some data, to gather some information and be like, oh, interesting. That belief came up again or whatever it might be. And what do I want to do with that?
And you're talking, and it's a particular theme of mine, doing it from really actually from a place of love, from a place of kindness, from a place of compassion. You're not saying, you blankety blank, I want you to hold. No, this is out of love.
Never. It's out of curiosity and kindness. It's like honest to God, like if the 1 degree shift that all of us did was just be kind to ourselves, we would live in a totally different world, And it's such a practice. And, as much as I've been in this work and you've been in this work and many of your listeners have been in this type of work, we can always be more kind, right? It's like, where am I judging myself? Where am I judging other people? Where am I like, oh my God, why did I say that in the book? And I should have said this. It's like, can I just be kind and recognize I'm doing the best that I can, that we're actually all doing the best that we can. And for me to recognize that as many times as I possibly can, particularly when I'm triggered by somebody or when I don't understand them or when we don't have the same value system, to me, that becomes the practice of like, wow, like just like me, that person is learning about life. Just like me, this person is learning to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Just like me, this person probably has a pretty wild story that if I heard it, I might be overwhelmed or moved to tears or whatever it might be. It's like we just sat in a room and if I was just like, tell me your story, we'd probably just cry together. And if you were like, Coby, tell me the story, it's like, okay, we'd just be I'd be like, can I give you a hug? Like, so as many times as I can remember, and like I said, I'm in the practice as well. How kind can I be? Can I start here first? And then hopefully I can offer it to other people.
Beautiful, beautiful. We'll probably double back around to forgiveness in a minute here because that's so important. But going back to the gremlins for a minute here, a couple key points. One is the complete and total follow through. So you said you don't want to go 110%, but you don't want to go 95%. And you have the example, I'm always thinking of butterflies. You have the example of a butterfly, a caterpillar, leaving a cocoon at 95%. Just when the going gets good, you're just starting to grow those wings and you come out too soon.
I mean, it's kind of a cheesy metaphor, but it's so amazing. It's so remarkable because what if a butterfly was like, forget it, we're almost there. Or, a mother that's in childbirth, right? Like right before the baby comes out, like, nah, I'm going to give up now. And it's like, there's a word in labor of transition, right? There's that transition time where it's the most intense part of labor. It feels like your body's on fire, but it's right then, that moment is right usually before the baby's about to come. And there's this beautiful miracle on the other side, or the butterfly's on the other side. And I think too often we do 95% of the work, and it's that last 5% that really counts. That's where the magic is really going to happen. And the gremlins want to come in and they want to preserve the status quo. They want to be like, no, don't change. Don't rock the boat. A bee life is good enough. Or whatever it might be. So the gremlins aren't always these like vicious parts of ourselves. It's just everything's fine. Let's just stay as it is versus can I be in the great mystery of life? Can I be in the great experiment of life? What else can I blossom into? If we believe, or if I believe that I am consciousness itself, the nature of consciousness from where I come from is that everything is fractalizing into more. There's literally more of consciousness to experience. And so I must be that too. So what else can I blossom into and not let the gremlin that might be afraid or scared or nervous hold me back from that last 5% when it might feel like there's so much sensation, right? Or resistance, right? Gremlins show up in all kinds of ways. And then on the flip side, in the coaching world, people often say like, give it 110%. I'm always like, what's wrong with 100%? Like just show up 100%. That's enough. Be economical, be resourceful, and, do things that work, but you don't need to do more of that. It's like, what's enough of a practice? What's enough of running in the cold, barefoot, whatever you're going to do. It's like, what's enough? What's enough? So.
Going back to triathlon or your half Ironman for a minute here, you talk about turning gremlins into fuel. And there's this Swiss triathlete, a woman who won many, many, many times over. And I can't remember if her last name was Fior. It was many years ago. And she talked about what to me is really such a spiritual practice and a metaphor of life. And that I began using it on the bike myself, which was when headwinds would hit her.
Yes.
She would picture herself as an eagle, And the more the wind blew, the more the eagle took flight. And so it's kind
So
of
good.
Tai Chiing our gremlins, drawing
That's it.
in that energy
That's it.
and using it to carry us forward.
I mean, that's, one of my teachers used to always say, like, invite your gremlins to tea, right? Rather than, the gremlin is usually just a part of ourselves that wants attention. It's like if you've ever been around a toddler that's like, mom, 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 dad, 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 mom, dad, mom, dad, or your cats. I'm sure your cats are like, hey, pay attention to me, pay attention to me.
And I love them very dearly.
Yeah, like usually all they want is just to be seen and heard. I mean, I think that's what I imagine most people are like. Do you see me? Do you hear me? Do I matter? And I often feel like the gremlin was some part of ourself that was trying to make sense of something that happened at some point. And to me, when the gremlins show up, it's like, I see you, I hear you, and giving it some space of like, hey, here's a cup of tea, or here's a graham cracker, like whatever you want to give them, rather than being unkind, back to this kind point. Because I think too often people like want to beat their gremlins up, or that self-sabotaging part of themselves up, or make them bad and wrong, versus it's just another part of yourself that wants to be loved and cared for. It's a practice. It's a practice for all of us. And because the more we put ourselves out there to be vulnerable, it's like, I don't know, I imagine that all of the people that listen to you, like, love you, right? And there could be that one person out there that doesn't, and they have something to say. And it's like to be able to still put yourself out there, even if someone doesn't resonate with you, even if someone doesn't agree with you. It's like, how do we stay loving anyways?
That is the practice. I'm going to jump into forgiveness in a second, but before we do that, one last practice in a sense. What's a GAP, a gremlin action plan? So
the gremlin action plan for me is, I don't like to assume that my gremlin is necessarily going to show up, right? Because then I'm just dragging my past and recreating into the future. I usually say things like, well, historically speaking, this part of myself may have shown up or may show up. So a gremlin action plan is, if I'm about to put myself into some experiment. So in the book, there's, 100 experiments, something like that. And so if I'm going to put myself into any experiment, I like to think to myself, what is the potential gremlin or self-sabotaging part of myself that could potentially show up? Not necessarily, but could show up. And how do I want to be with it if it does? For example, I'm really close with my parents. I have a very loving relationship with my parents, but I know a lot of people just went home for the holidays and spent time with their parents, and maybe they don't have a great relationship. So for someone that was going home to their family, if they know that historically speaking, they get triggered or they get activated or they get defensive, what could be a potential gremlin action plan, right? Like, how do you want to show up before the event happens? So it might be creating a boundary with the part of you that wants to make your family bad and wrong, or it might be the part of you that never spoke up to your family, and you're going to say like, okay, I'm going to risk making some waves. I'm going to speak up. Or it could be something as simple as somebody that wants to start meditating, and they know that they don't typically like getting up in the morning. So it could be, okay, I'm going to set 10 alarms on my phone and put it across the room where I have to get up, right? It's a simple practice, but it's meeting the gremlin on that's saying, just stay in bed, start tomorrow. You don't have to do it today. So there's infinite ways that you can have a gremlin action plan, but it's getting honest with yourself of, what do you know that could potentially sneak in and self-sabotage? And then what are you prepared to do about it? And what are the different ways that can be supportive for you? Sometimes that means leaning into your community, asking for help. I love physical reminders. Like, sometimes I wear jewelry or something that I don't typically wear as like a friendly reminder of like, oh, right, I'm practicing. I love the quote, are your words an improvement upon silence?
Ooh.
I know, it's so good, right? As a speaker, I talk a lot. So I also like to be quiet a lot. And then it really is a practice for me of, why am I talking right now? Like, is this useful? So, I might wear a ring or something that I don't normally wear as a reminder of like, right, Coby, practice just listening. And what happens when you just listen to others and you make space for others rather than being the one that talks. And I just really love that practice. So a gremlin action plan is just finding ways to support you to walk all the way across the coals, all the way through the sacred fire, to get to the edge of the plane and jump out, to get on the bungee cord platform and say, okay, I'm going to do this. And to me, it's always connected to, for the sake of what? for the sake of what am I doing this, right? Back to this, not to be painful, not to hurt myself, but for transformation, for what's potentially on the other side, because there's no guarantee of that either, right?
But there is a guarantee, I believe, that if you put yourself out there, you will change, you will grow, you will expand. None of what we're describing is a contraction process.
Exactly. It just might not be what you think it is, right? Like I put myself in some experiments where I was like, oh, well, I thought I was going to go into this experiment of love and I was going to be just loving and peaceful. And that experiment became really painful. And I experienced a lot of grief and sorrow. However, the willingness to meet that and be with that brought me to a deeper level of compassion, right? But it wasn't initially like, oh, I'm going to meditate on love and do experiments around love, and now I'm loving. It was like, whoa, I have to be with all the times that I didn't listen to my heart, or that I forgot to be loving, or I wasn't the highest version of myself, or the most empowered version of myself, or I wasn't the most skillful. And wow, back to forgiveness, where do I need to ask for forgiveness? Where do I need to say I'm sorry? Where do I need to forgive myself for doing the best that I can? And also recognizing that because I don't know everything about life, that at times things are concealed. And can I be in the place of, okay, how can I show up now? And what can I do now? And what's the experiment now? Versus this is how I think it should be, or this is what I think I should learn. But definitely expanding.
And that's one of the challenges of the self-help movement. I don't know what we call it, of
Whatever.
doing the work. Yes.
Right. Being interested.
One of the challenges of being interested is it is easy to take the wiring of the past, overlay it onto the present, and then get down on ourselves for getting down on ourselves in the middle of an experiment.
I know. We're so funny. We're funny creatures. And that's why I do believe the power of community, of working one-on-one with people. Do you still work one-on-one with people?
Absolutely. And that actually gives me the juice. That's something that I've cut back quite a bit from where I used to be, but I learn the most about myself when I'm working with someone else.
Yeah, I just finished teaching the main program that I teach is called Quarter Life Calling. Yeah. It's a program for people in their 20s, and really, even though, I teach for all ages, but that is a particular age group that I love working with. And I just finished a program with them the other day, and being in their company, one, like how hungry they were for like, let's do the work, let's go in and to be in relationship and to be supportive and to see people, to, support people. And, one of the promises that I always make them is, I don't make this promise to everybody, but I make it to this particular program of like, I am on your team forever as best as I possibly can. And if you ever feel like you are drowning, right? Like not having just a bad day, like there's other people out there if you're having a bad day, but if you feel like you are drowning, like I will be there. And I just believe that, I don't do a lot of one-on-one coaching anymore, but I do believe the power of showing up when I have the ability to show up, when I'm riding a wave and I feel like, okay, I can be with life. Life is easy and deep right now. I just think that that's such an important thing, regardless of what someone's work is, right? Like, can we show up for people and support them to be in the experiment of their life, and then also receive it when other people are there for us? And so I just am so grateful that, you do the work that you do, and for those people that show up for each other. I think it's such a critical part of the work.
I'm guessing you've been on Maui, or at least you've been in Hawaii. There's a term that I use. I call it Ohana rules. Which means once we start working together, we are family.
It's beautiful. Yeah. It's like, to me, it's like the boat's not going anywhere until we're all on. And it's not my responsibility to get everyone on the boat. It's, hey, I'm here. I'm interested. And we only all have so much time. So it's like, if I can show up for the people I can show up for, you show up the people you show up for, everyone shows up for the people they can show up for, even if it's one person and that one person is yourself. We're going to move that one every shift. It changes everything. It changes everything.
How do we stop going back to self-forgiveness here?
Yeah.
And you talk about a friend who would cut herself. And we all, well, maybe not all of us. I will speak for myself. It's internal cuts. It's not external cuts.
Right.
From the past. How do we all stop harming ourselves?
I know. That to me is it, right? It's like most of us, hopefully, if you are cutting yourself externally, I would say get help. Today, I do think everybody would benefit from a great life coach and a great therapist. Like everybody, even if you don't think you need one, everyone. Like I think we all benefit. But to me, that sense of it's a pretty horrific story that she has that I'm not going to share here, but she's not trying to kill herself. It's a coping mechanism of dealing with the intense feelings that she has. And yeah, I think a lot of us cut ourselves internally. We say an unkind thing about ourselves. We judge ourselves. We compare ourselves. We, what we feed ourselves, both food and what we ingest, who we ingest, the information we take in, right? Like all of it. So to me, the practice is, I always ask myself the question, where am I committing a crime against wisdom? I just think it's the easiest way to get data really fast. Where am I committing a crime against wisdom? Could be something as simple as, oh, when I eat sugar, I feel like shit, or staying up till midnight isn't helpful. It doesn't make me feel more alive. Or, we can go to the spectrum all the way to the other side of the ways in which people harm themselves. So I think, one, it's recognizing. It's first the awareness of, there's the crime against wisdom. The next question is, what am I prepared to do about it? What's my best guess? And that's where asking for help, leaning into your community, getting curious about what your most empowered, highest version of yourself might say. Where do you need to clean up some messes with yourself, with other people? Where are there beliefs that you're stuck into that you do need to create a boundary with, or you need to shift? Where do you need to create boundaries? Like I really just think I could write probably 100 books on boundaries. Like
kind, gentle, boundary, good. Kind, gentle, boundary, good.
Exactly. Like, so learning the practice of creating kind, loving, gentle boundaries for yourself, for the gift of what you can give yourself, we might make that behavior again. And that's why the last chapter in the book is begin again.
Yes.
Because it's like I'd love to say, be authentic once, sit in the fire once, make that 1 degree shift once, be, all the things once, but we are all learning. And sometimes we need to begin again and begin again. That's my favorite mantra, is begin again and begin again and begin again and begin again and begin again. And it might be, I need to forgive myself again for just learning, right? Like when people say, I have no regrets, I'm like, really? Like you don't regret anything? And it's not to live in regret, right? I think living in regret is not helpful. And I don't think living in guilt and shame is helpful, but there are things that I look back and I'm like, wow, I regret how I responded to that person, or how I spoke to that person, or how I, whatever it might be, from being blind to something or just not seeing clearly. But when I do the work and really get clear of like, wow, that is not the version of myself that I want to be. I don't want to show up that way. What do I need to do to clean this up? And then be willing to show up to it, make a vow to myself, a vow to my own soul of like, I want to do better. I want to skillfully engage. I want to participate in a different way. I want to learn from this. And like I say, one of the definitions of yoga for me, my ultimate definition is that yoga is composting. How do you take the shit in your life and turn it into something useful, right? And sometimes we have to look to our past hurts from ourselves or what we may have caused somebody else and say, how can I learn from this? And people may not want to forgive us, and that's ultimately their choice. But it's like, if we are forever carrying around guilt and shame, what if that's the thing that's holding us back? And what if that's the greatest 1 degree shift that you could do is harm yourself no longer, be kind, and do whatever you need to do to forgive yourself and to potentially move into the place of forgiving other people, which is a radical act. It is a radical act.
On that note, I wonder about this 7-day exercise that I think will bring up gremlin after gremlin after gremlin, but could shift everything, what you call the be nice inquiry.
Oh, that's nice. I forgot about that one. So the be nice inquiry, it's like, just stop saying shitty things about yourselves for 7 days, right? Like could you be nice to yourself for 7 days and then maybe extend it to other people? Like, what would being nice look like? And again, it doesn't sound like this radical thing. However, I do really believe if all of us listening, myself included, was nice for 7 days, I think many things would come up. The ways in which we want to judge or gossip, the ways in which we want to shame ourselves or live into guilt, or the actions that we might create that just simply aren't nice. So I like to think of it as, what are things that I can do and say? How can I be and act that will make me feel more alive, more open, more loving? And then can I offer it to, the way in which I engage with other people? So I just think everything, pick any experiment, and I think everything will come up. I don't know who said this, but there's a saying, how you do anything is how you do everything.
Yes.
Do you know who said that? I don't know who said it.
No,
Somebody
but you did mention it was one of your all-time favorites.
Yeah, like I just think how you do any of these experiments, whether they're anything that's in the book or anything in your own life that you know it's time to be in the experiment of, life will show up and say, are you sure about that? You sure about that?
It means that everything matters, which means we can be more authentic, more true to ourselves, more loving, more kind, and there's no limit. It's infinite, like you said, fractals, infinite in all directions. But the more you do that, the more life becomes juicier, richer, more fulfilling.
Juicier. Yeah, it's like there's just more. Yeah, there's more to celebrate, all of it, right? And it's not that all, like, I'm not like everything is perfect and good. It's like, but everything is perfect, right? Like, we're just in this place of learning to be with it all and start to paint the picture that we want to be. And what did you just say? Everything. What did you say earlier?
Everything matters. Everything matters.
So someone just recently asked me, they were like, do you really believe that everything matters? And I was like, even if everything doesn't matter, I care anyways, right? Like, even if none of this matters, even if all of this is just nonsense and whatever, we're in some weird dream of somebody else and none of this is real and true, even if none of it matters, I'm going to show up anyways. I'm going to try anyways. I'm going to participate anyways, because on the end of my life, I want to be able to say, like, I fully played, I fully engaged, and I tasted all the food on the menu, not just a few that I got used to, right? Like, it's like, I want to taste it all. I want to be in the experience of it all. And, I want to be able to celebrate it all. And ultimately, I just think the more we can trust the waves that come in, that we can be with them, it's a doorway to freedom. And then we start to recognize that freedom is our birthright, right? Anyways, I could go on for hours.
You could, and we get to wrap things up and do a brief meditation and share where do people get the book. But a question just popped up, so we're going to run a minute or two over, which is, I'm hearing this from an audience's perspective, and one of the questions is, what if you're saying about how life can be grand and more fulfilling and more this and more that. Yeah. I'm exhausted.
Sure. So I get it. So one of the experiments, or many of the experiments in the book are, what if the experiment was, back to what I was saying earlier, napping? What if the experiment was pausing? What if the experiment was letting go? What if the experiment was asking for help and recognize you don't need to do it alone? I definitely went through a phase where I was just like, oh my gosh, like this book was a journey in itself. And I've had a lot of things happen in the last couple of years, and I'm really in a phase of, I'm going to rest. I'm going to take care and slow down. And, I really appreciate you doing this call. And I've gotten really cautious of how much I say yes to, right? Because it's like, okay, of course I want people to read the book. And of course I want to get this out there, but at what cost, right? So for me, it's being really mindful of, these are my boundaries, and this is what feels nourishing right now. And I get it. I would say that most people, rather than even meditating at the end of this call, I would say, go and lay down while you're listening to this. Go put your legs up the wall, fall asleep. And, my personal belief is any meditation teacher that says you shouldn't fall asleep in meditation doesn't get that a lot of people are really exhausted. And
we call it napitation.
That's great. I love that. I've never heard that. So rest. And I just think many of us are frazzled. We have so much coming at us, and that could be the greatest gift you give yourself. It could be the 1-degree shift that changes your entire life. And then it could be the source of inspiration for somebody else to do the same. Our liberation, we're entangled with each other, right? So when you give yourself permission to rest, all of a sudden, without having to tell anybody to do anything. I'm not into telling people what to do. I'm like, put yourself in the experiment, see what happens. But when I see people putting themselves in experiments, I'm like, oh, wow, look at the impact that that's having. And, over the last couple of years, I have created so much more space by, I don't want to say I quit a lot of things, but I quit a lot of things. I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do this, and I'm not going to do that. And what is enough? And so I would say, great. Be honest with yourself. Take a nap.
Where can people go to find 1 Degree Revolution and to find out more?
So all of the places, It can be on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. If you go to my website, which is just cobyk.com or cobyk.com, it's on there. If I'm on Instagram, it's my first and last name, Coby Kozlowski. The link is in the bio. But all the places that you can buy books, all the places. And, also for any listener, one of my aims is to get it into all of your libraries for those people that are making the 1 degree shift of spending less money. So I'm trying to get it in there. So yeah, all the places.
Would you mind leading us after some water, of course, would you mind leading us in a meditation then?
Yeah, thank you. So find yourself coming into any comfortable position, whether that's laying down.
I'll pause unless you're driving down the road, in which case this later.
Yes, please do it later. So laying down or sitting up, standing, whatever's going to feel nourishing. And just taking a deep, clearing breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. Welcoming your physical body here, this container of consciousness that allows you to ride the waves. Welcoming your breath, this unique breath that will never be here again. Celebrating the mind, the beautiful mind, the fluctuations of the mind. It's not about stilling the ocean. It's learning about how to ride the waves. Honoring the part of yourself that can witness, that can observe, that is lovingly noticing. And then connecting into the part of yourself that is connected to something greater than yourself. Whether you call that love, divinity, family, stardust, God. And taking a moment to welcome all of yourself here. And so you might simply say those words, I welcome all of myself here. I welcome the part of myself that is passionate, that is strong. I welcome the part of myself that is quiet. I welcome the part of myself that will jump into the fire. I welcome the part of myself that can be nervous. I welcome the child inside of me and the wise elder. I welcome the part of me that can be judgmental and the part of me that can create a boundary with my judgments. And remember, there's a difference between being welcoming and acting from that place. I welcome all of the waves of life to move through me. I welcome all of my feelings. I welcome the part of myself that wants to be loved and heard and connected. And just take a moment now and welcome different parts of yourself, and maybe parts of yourself you don't normally welcome. Again, a difference between being welcoming and acting from. I can be welcoming to my anger, but not act from my anger. And then welcome that you are perfect, whole, and complete, just as you are. Perfect, whole, and complete, just as you are. And either bring your hands onto your heart or onto your belly as you fully celebrate that you are the point that life was trying to make. Life wanted to express itself as you. May you be welcoming to yourself so you welcome others. And taking a clearing breath, again, in through the nose. And if you've closed your eyes, opening your eyes. May you, as you walk through your day, be welcoming as many times as you can remember and throw yourself into the experiment. So thank you for your time. Thanks for listening, if you are still listening. And may we all bump into each other somewhere down the river.
Woohoo!
Thank you so much. Thanks for your time. Thanks
Coby,
for
this was
being
beautiful.
you.
This was so, so beautiful.
Thank you so much. And thanks for wearing yellow. Looks great on you.
Oh, I wanted to match the cover.
Yeah,
That's
it
not
looks
the
good. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get 1 degree revolution, and start making small shifts for big changes today, and shine bright. Woohoo!
You're adorable.
Oh, this was awesome, Coby. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you. And I really do appreciate the work you're doing, and just curious to, hear more and learn more and listen to the, other things that you're putting out there in the world. So thank you.
I hope you enjoyed the interview with Coby Kozlowski as much as I did. I'm going to give the 7-day Be Nice experiment a try. I hope you do too. Put your comments below. Let us know how it goes. To check out more amazing interviews, click here, subscribe below, and be sure to click on the bell icon to be notified of upcoming shows. Love you guys.